Welcome friend to this session of design pattern. In this session we will try to understand what is flyweight pattern. We will try to go through the fundamentals and a sample source code, and we will map the sample source code with live projects. So first thing, fundamentals, they fall into the structural pattern category. Again, patterns which fall into structural pattern categories are those patterns which helps us to solve the structural issues regarding software architecture or what you call designing classes. So any kind of structural issues we want to solve, we should refer to the patterns which fall into structural pattern category. A flyweight pattern is useful, when we are creating many objects, huge quantity of objects, and every of these objects are sharing some kind of common data. So for example, let's say that you are doing some kind of batch process, and in the batch process you are creating a million objects, and all these million objects basically share some kind of common data. Now, rather than creating copies of these common data, what you do is that basically you create one copy of it, you know, in a singleton object, and then you create only copies of variable data and refer to that singleton copy, to complete the whole data. Okay, I will give you give you example of it. You can see in a video that uh, example of a simple visitor card printing, a company visitor card. So what you see that in a visitor card, what you will see normally is that you have an address part of the organization, okay, which is basically constant, or we can say they are always the same. Okay, so what you do is that you move one is the address part, which is constant, so that's what we'll call it as static data. The other one is the name of the person, the manager or the worker or whatever it is. So the person's name is a variable data that will change basically. So two types of data, one is the static data, okay, and one is this variable data. Now let's say that you want to print a visiting card of approximately 100 employees, and every visiting card, every employees you every for every employee you want to print approximately 200 visiting cards. So that's approximately some 20 to 30,000 objects you are going to create. Okay. Now rather than creating multiple copies of the static data, okay, what we do is that we create only one copy of the static data. So here's how we'll do that. So what we do is that we create one copy of static data and put it into a singleton object. So here's your static data. Okay. What I've done is that I have just put a static keyword and made it a singleton object. And now here's my complete visitor address, which actually has the variable data, that is my name, that is the name of the person whose visiting card you're going to print, and the static data. Okay. And this static data references to that singleton object. So only one copy of the object is existing for the static shared common data. So what we'll do is that we'll try to just go through a sample source code. Okay, the same source code we'll try to go through. You can get this source code in DVD. So basically here's our static data, and here's the singleton object which we discussed about. And because you have used the static keyword, only one instance of the object will exist. And here's your complete variable address, your variable complete data, and here's your variable data name. So now if you create what you call multiple copies of the object, right, internally only one copy of the static data will be created. Now this will lead to usage of less memory, which will increase the performance of the project. So you should ask yourself question, when if you want to implement flyweight pattern, you should ask yourself question, that is my problem related that I have many objects and all of these objects are sharing some kind of common data. If yes, then you use flyweight pattern. But remember that again, flyweight pattern is a very less used pattern. Especially it will be used when you are creating objects which are like really huge in quantity. When I say huge means, it should at one instant it should minimum be having approximately some kind of 10,000 to 20,000 objects. If that kind of scenario is existing, and second criteria is that they should share some kind of common data, or else you cannot implement flyweight pattern. So are you creating huge objects, huge number of objects, and these huge number of objects, are they having some kind of substantial static data or common data? If yes, then use flyweight pattern. Definitely it will be useful to your projects. So whenever you are implementing any kind of pattern, try to be a bit practical. Ask yourself question, for instance, it's possible that you are creating some kind of 4 or 5 objects, okay, of you are creating some kind of 4 or 5 objects, and these 4 and 5 objects are sharing some kind of common data. Now for 4 and 5 objects, you don't need to implement flyweight pattern, because you won't see any kind of performance increase and decrease, because 4 objects can be the way we have today's hardware RAM. 4 objects are can be easily consumed in. So as I said previously, that it should be substantial amount, minimum 10,000 to 20,000 objects, and then they share a common data. Then only use flyweight pattern. So you should look from the practical perspective, that is it going to really impact my project? You know, if yes, then you should implement the appropriate design pattern. So again, I will just iterate through it. Flyweight pattern should be used when you have large numbers of objects which are created at one instance, which you are processing at one instance, and these number of objects are sharing some kind of common data. I hope I was able to clear flyweight pattern fundamentals. If you have any kind of doubts, you can mail me at shiv_queral@yahoo.com. You can